Hey there, folks, and welcome to Trek Tonight. Coming to you from Kingman, Arizona.
Yes.
And everyone in Kingman appreciates the correction.
Short. I got to make it longer.
Thank you,
I don't know
Chris.
why it's short.
Did
more than one
the
day.
Kingsman movie play in Kingman, Arizona? Did it do well there? I wonder.
I don't know how it did, but I'm sure it was here at some point. There was a theater here.
Yeah.
And where people are like, hey, they made a movie about our town. Wait a minute, there's an S in there. That's not.
Like I said, it's a common mistake.
Yeah, we're laughing because I added Joe's Town to the opening, and I made it Kingsman, and it's Kingman. So that's where that joke is coming from. That's why we're chuckling. So at any rate, how you guys doing?
Walking and talking.
Yeah, did you have a nice Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I did. It's most of it was provided by Trader Joe's.
Right.
I do like to cook, but it's only me and my mom, so there's only so much we can eat.
Right.
Like I get like this half a turkey breast that Trader Joe's does. It's seasoned and so on. Right. And stuffing. That was where I sort of made the most culinary effort. Like I added sweet Italian sausage and slivered almonds.
Right.
And I had a couple of pre-made Thanksgiving dishes, vegetable dishes for the side.
Yep.
And some cranberry sauce or dressing, I guess, from Trader Joe's as well. I once made a really nice cranberry dressing I used pineapple juice, lime zest and lime juice, as well as some ginger. And that was a really nice combination.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in a while. It's not terribly hard to do, but it is like it's a lot of little moving parts. And
it is. It's like I make my own chutney, and this year I jazzed it up a tiny bit because normally it's cranberries and dried cherries and raisins. I think I'm not sure, and then toasted black walnuts, and you got some lemon zest in there, and some red pepper flakes, and so on and so forth. Give it a little zing. Yeah. But this year I used a dried cherry blueberry mix, and it was really good. So I don't know. So I haven't.
You guys sound like you do great.
Out of a can in years, huh? What was that, Joe?
So it sounds like you guys do wonderfully in your culinary expeditions.
Well, I got a Thanksgiving menu that I've done out of a book from the 90s called Great Good Food, and it was put out by the Silver Palette, which was in New York. I don't think that's still there. Is it, Leo? Silver Palette?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It might be gone.
It might be gone. But at any rate, the book, and I've used that recipe, and the main reason I started with it was because of the way they instruct you to prep the turkey. Because you don't stuff it with stuffing, you stuff it with you cube an onion, you put apples and pears in it that you chop up, along with your regular poultry herbs, and then you baste it. After the first hour, you baste it every 20 minutes with a chicken broth / Marcella wine mixture. And I have never had a dry turkey. I mean, it's just really full of flavor.
It's funny because a lot of people talk about how dangerous it is to stuff your turkey.
Right.
Although growing up, that's what we had. And my mom used to. My favorite part, stuffing has always been my favorite part of Thanksgiving.
Right.
Bread.
Well, it's the only time you have it, really.
Yeah. Is in the front of the turkey, not the cavity opening on the other end. There's usually a little bit of skin.
Right.
My mom would stuff stuffing onto that, and use some, those little there's little spikes that you use.
Yeah. Right. I do that. Yeah.
And it would bake. As it would roast, it would it adhere to the skin, and it would be so good.
Yeah.
And if I could find a place that would sell me a chicken skin, I would make turkey balls, the stuffing balls for that. That would be great.
Yeah.
But my last culinary thing is with the leftovers I made a corn turkey chowder. I took the carcass. Like I got most of the meat off, and I put the carcass in water, seasoned it, and let it, slowly cook down.
Right.
And I took two cans of like just canned corn and pureed them. I added that, some peppers as well as turkey, and seasoned it. And then I put some frozen roast corn, again from Trader Joe's,
Right.
and let that stew. And it's really came out really nice. We had it tonight, and we had it a couple of nights ago.
Now, when you were done with the turkey carcass, did you stand way across in the trash room, have it in a bag, hurl it towards the incinerator, and say,
I haven't brought it. I will say that. Well, that because one time I spent Thanksgiving I spent down in Delaware with Chris.
Yeah.
We went, like, he had the turkey carcass, and he's walking out to the driveway, throw it into the garbage, and I just turned around and I just went, "See you in hell, turkey."
Do you know, and it is such legend in our home. I have taught my children this.
Yes. So I haven't brought the carcass down because I have to bring it. Like we have a compost container.
Gotcha.
Down in the sort of the.
Well,
store.
I'm dating myself in New York. I called it an incinerator. I'm sure they're not.
Yeah, we still have a trash chute, but for just regular trash. But they've started doing a compost thing.
Yeah.
So I should bring it down in there. But I will say, see you in hell, turkey, when I do.
Yeah,
so.
make sure you do.
Yeah.
I remember as a little kid, we lived in a building called the Parker Crescent in Manhattan, which was down in the lower 30s, on the all the way over on the east side. And you would go downstairs. Now, I was a little kid, so it all seemed enormous to me. I'm sure it really wasn't. But there was sort of a complex under the building with your laundry room, and where you could get, there were vending machines. You could buy milk and things like that. But there was also the incinerator room where all the garbage from the building would come down, and you would see the guy, the superintendent or whoever, stoking the fires of this thing. It was like the engines on the Titanic, he was like, and I'm sure it was billowing huge bits of smoke at it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, we, like I said, we still have a trash chute.
But I'm sure it's a compactor.
It is, because I think there are regulations against incinerating garbage.
Right.
These days.
Oh, hey, we're yakking away about the past, and here is Keith, our camera geek friend, watching us on Twitch, saying, "Howdy, Keith.
Howdy,
How
Keith.
are you?
Hello, Keith. Howdy.
Howdy. That's what the shark says to Woody, right?
Yeah.
Howdy. Yeah.
Well, our Thanksgiving was not traditional. We went out.
I want to hear about this, Joe, because you made it sound so exciting.
Well, it is exciting. It's really good. I mean, it's a place that as I recall, was not familiar with you gentlemen. It's popular out here. It's a place called Claim Jumper, and it's nestled within one of our favorite casino in Laughlin, Nevada, which is about a half hour from here. So we decided to go that route this year for Thanksgiving. And Claim Jumper is one of those places where they give you a very generous, huge portion for a single person and then triple it. And that's what you get on your plate. And including dessert, which we had to take with us. Their famous item there is the what they call the mother load chocolate cake.
Yeah, you were talking about that.
Yes. And not these little ones you see on some cakes, but 7 full layers high. The thing's about, I would say, well over a foot high. And a slice of that will feed 3 people easily. So, but it was really good. We had it was our local family. We had one visiting cousin from out of town, which added to the experience. And we just had a good time there and let others do the cleanup. So.
Right.
That is the best part of eating out. Is somebody else cooks and somebody else cleans up.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
And there were leftovers because they give you so much, even though it may not be turkey. Whatever you had.
Yes. Well, we have a there we go to our viewers who normally watch us on Facebook. I'm sorry, for some reason there was a glitch and I just repaired it. So we're back on Facebook, but it wasn't broadcasting to Facebook for some reason. So I apologize. And we are now back live on Facebook. So happened to notice that up in the corner, I have a little indicator that tells me where we're broadcasting to, and Facebook had a little exclamation point next to it. So.
Well, I can't have that.
Yeah, I love going to those places like that where they. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a Italian restaurant by us where it's like every order is enough to feed a small family, you know, and you always come
Yes.
home with more than, you know, at least two nights worth of either a couple of lunches or,
Yeah.
you know, a couple other dinners out of it. So, yeah,
Very good. Yeah, we have our Italian place like that in this part of the woods. Maybe it's something familiar to you. Do you know Buca di Beppo? Or is that
yes,
regional?
yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's where you go when you want leftovers for a week.
We have one in Philly and then another one in the suburbs of Philly.
Yeah. Good stuff.
And I remember
I'm hungry already.
I had a boss
Mhm.
who really thought a great deal of himself. And while he was being very generous with the department, the people under me, he took us all to Buca di Beppo, and he got the Pope room, and he sat in the Pope throne.
Oh,
yeah. So
Did you have to kiss the ring?
It was very funny because the guy, I'm not going to say his name, but the guy was Irish as the day is long, and he used to work for the Bureau. And his job was to keep tabs on the mob. And he was fascinated with anything Italian.
Yeah, I can see that.
Craig Lubin says that Leo is well known for his turkey exorcisms.
This is true. I cast thee out.
See you in hell. Anyway, maybe we should talk about Star Trek.
Yes, maybe.
Why not?
Yeah. We've talked an awful lot about a variety of things, but none of them have to do with Star Trek. And I just wrote a promo for our Patreon page, which I'm in the process of filming a bit for that.
Oh, nice.
And so I talk about how we talk about Star Trek, so I guess maybe we should.
Yes.
We saw, because of Thanksgiving being on a Thursday, we weren't on air live, and we didn't get to talk about episode 15. So we're doing 15 and 16, Masquerade and Preludes, both. Craig says we must discuss percussion engineering.
Yes.
Very true. Actually, Craig, you can discuss with us, which I'm sure you will. Keith thinks that's funny. You can discuss with us why a ship that is warp capable would need a cryo chamber. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Second episode.
Second episode. Let's talk about Masquerade.
So let's talk about Masquerade. Masquerade I enjoyed quite a bit. It left me very excited to see what was coming next. I don't know. What did you guys think? I think we started. Who did we start with last week? I don't know.
Start with Joe. I think I usually.
Joe, go ahead. What did you think of Masquerade?
Well, sure. I have a brief intro to some of my thoughts. So Masquerade, yes, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought that there was a lot of good callbacks and just good setting. And the episode was beautiful when they were planet side. I mean, there were of course reminiscences of the planet in Picard, with like the casino type environment, although it was just mainly a trading post, I understand. But
right.
I thought I should have my little character reference there, but I didn't forgot to put it up. But our young captain, Dahl.
Right.
I thought what he went through was very interesting. I thought that was a highlight of the episode. In terms of discovering he was basically a melting pot of all the species, basically, and they decided to make their emergence once the good geneticists there, decided to bring them forward. So I thought the cropping up of Vulcaneers and telepathy and Klingon ridges and the whole thing, I thought that was really clever and a lot of fun.
Right.
And just overall a good one. I mean, I not to jump in, I since we're doing a double header, I like this one better than the second. Although the second one, it worked well for me for personal reasons, which I'll get to when we get to that episode.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I thought this one was very enjoyable and moved it forward quite a bit.
Right. Right.
The Dr. Who special, Craig. Yeah, that is that is apparently from one of Sung's children, engineered doll.
Right.
It apparently has Q DNA. Now, how you get Q DNA seems like that seems to be the real story beyond.
Yeah.
Oh, there was also like Proto-Organian. There was a lot of. He was a real,
Right.
sort of melting pot, which in a
Right.
way is the ultimate expression of the Federation. Them all coming together.
Right.
It was interesting because he found out that he doesn't have like a two parents the way most people do, biologically.
Right.
That he was this scientific experiment. I have to say I was a little disappointed with their disposal of Okana. Okana sort of had a real heel turn, because the Romulans come after Dal because they want the ship,
Right.
Because he's the captain, and he's like, "Wow, this looks dangerous, kids," and he just fucks off, down an alley. And the thing I liked about the character in his first appearance, and I mean, there's nothing to say that he could not have changed between then and now.
Right.
It's been like, I don't know, like 30, 40 years,
Right.
in Star Trek time.
Yeah.
But because the whole thing was everybody sort of, wrote him off as this scoundrel who had no moral. But what he's really trying to do is bring these two young lovers together. You sort of do, this Romeo and Juliet-esque story from the original series.
Right.
And like the idea was, in spite of the fact of being a bit of a horn dog, because he was certainly he was sleeping his way through the Enterprise.
Oh yeah.
Including a young Terry Hatcher in a brief appearance on that episode. But it just felt like it. He was a rogue, but with a heart of gold.
Right.
And it was more about people's perception of him rather than his actual character. So for him to sort of do this heel turn felt a little disingenuous to me.
Yeah.
Especially
Keith says, I rewatched the TNG episode with Okana, and the Prodigy Okana didn't seem like the same guy that we saw in TNG. And I will say, I did the same thing, Keith. I rewatched it after having seen that one. And I was a little, well, actually, no. I rewatched it after seeing his first appearance, which was in the episode before, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's when I rewatched it. So, I thought that was a little, I mean, on one hand, though, I didn't think he sounded like the same character either.
Possibly. It's the same actor.
I know it's the same actor.
AKA the Rocketeer, too.
But he sounded, in TNG, he sounded like a smooth talker.
Yeah.
In this, he sounded a little bit like somebody's lecherous uncle.
A little, yeah.
So
that could be a misfire in terms of trying to mature the character.
I mean, when he's sitting there and they're talking about, they're giving Dal crap because he hasn't found a port for them to go to make repairs. He's sort of leaning there with his foot on the thing, and he's eating a blue apple, and I don't know. He just didn't. He was like, oh yeah. That's a great place to go. I mean, I don't know. He sounded more like somebody's older relative, and I know he's older.
Yeah,
but he didn't. I feel like he should still have maintained his smooth, his polish, and he didn't have that.
I mean, obviously, he's sort of like at the butt end of like the Federation. When we first see him, he's sort of like way off the beaten path, and it seems like his like missing Terry Hatcher has made him old and bitter. Well,
there's the solution.
How can you ask and answer? Thank you, Craig Lubin. I can understand him being maybe less smooth in hard times, but it felt like he was a different character, played by the same actor using the same name. Leo's right; they didn't do Okana justice in Prodigy, says Keith. It just, I mean, and I know that he is sort of by rights, like he's an older, more experienced, space trader. He was the captain of his own ship. So, you'd think they'd all want. Everybody seemed to like him except for Dahl, who's getting weird and jealous because he's 14 years old.
Right. And that part all made sense to me.
That makes sense, but and I know they had to, they probably weren't going to keep him on for the rest of the season.
He has that fantasy where he accidentally sucks himself out the airlock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of what we might be observing, not you guys have mentioned it, is that, in the Outrageous Okuna, we had like obviously a younger, sly rogue, but he was actually part of the solution of that episode's crisis.
Yeah.
Here he seems to have regressed a little bit because he just kind of, just gruff and not really doing anything to help them out.
I mean, I'm curious if they'll bring him back at some point. I mean, there's only 5 more episodes in the season. Spoiler: he's not in episode this current week's episode. Spoilers:
he's not in Preludes.
If you're watching the show and you haven't watched the episodes, I'm not sure why you're here.
Because you're so good looking, Leo.
Yes,
I double that.
Draw is wonderful faces. That's what.
Yes, unlike Okana, I've kept my looks.
Right, exactly. You're not the sort of shady.
Mine is the eye patch.
Sketchy uncle. Yeah, you're not the sketchy uncle version of yourself.
No, that's for the after hours.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's just that was a little disappointing, but it is interesting. And then, of course, now the Tal Shiar are after them.
Right.
And they're using disruptors, I'm guessing, because that's only the Federation tends to use phasers.
It's the same weapons as in Picard, season 1.
Yeah, Picard, yeah. So, which
double-handed things,
how close we are to the destruction of the star in Romulus.
Yeah.
So it's all tying in together. But like I said, I enjoyed it. I liked seeing his weird transformations, this sort of, and which just shows you why augments are sort of not on the menu in the Federation.
Right.
I mean, clearly, because he's going to this black market geneticist who's probably as sketchy as anything in Star Trek ever is.
Well, yeah, Janeway warns him.
Yeah.
If something sounds too good to be true, it's generally not. Yeah.
But it adds a little comedy into sort of a serious moment.
Mm-hmm.
And Murph turns out to be he'll become their new security chief because he is apparently indestructible and he can seal up a vacuum
right. And he was kicking ass too.
He was kicking ass.
Yeah.
And it's true when the Romulans did their sort of like skydive, their sort of like halo jump,
right?
To the station. At first, it always reminds me of the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek when they do their and they've done it, and he can fire photon torpedoes with his butt.
Yeah,
something
very
not
handy.
even Riker could do. He's done a lot of consoles over the 7 years. He never accidentally fired a photon. You would think there would be a like some sort of safety involved. Like are you sure you want to fire this photon torpedo? Something that it's not just like, oh wait, I hit the oops, but. Murph is sort of the comic relief, but at least he's showing to be more useful than just as a sort of a, goopy sort of fart machine.
Right, right. Now, Craig,
his evolution is interesting. I mean, who knows where he's going to go next in his growth?
Well,
it makes it very interesting.
In the next episode, he's sort of wandering around with phasers going off, slicing up the inside of the ship. But Craig makes an interesting general science comment. And that is, if the Romulan star went nova, then any system within 100 light years would suffer adverse effects.
This is true. Craig sent us all a YouTube video outlining that. So
goopy fart machine.
Yes.
From one spectrum to the other.
Yeah.
One other minor shortcoming for me, totally subjective, of course.
Yeah.
I do appreciate, like any fan, the mention of the continuity and the mention of legacy characters, so to speak. But I think the inclusion of Eric Soong in this one makes it dangerously close, making this too small of a universe.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's real connected, and it's a little bit much. It's kind of a stretch in this.
Now, I will say, I don't know when the various writing staffs came up with their stuff and how insular they were when they did. So is it a plan, or is it a coincidence, or a happy / maybe not so happy bumping of different creative ideas? I don't know.
I would imagine there's somebody doing continuity over all the shows, so they don't, like, somebody doesn't set something up and then.
I would think so, but I don't know. They may not be, because I mean, I know that this is Paramount, but it's also Nickelodeon. So and when you really look at it, it's really a Nickelodeon show, even though it's running on Paramount Plus. By the way, I'm going to just jump in and say Scott Taylor's in the house with a thumbs up. Hey, Scott, good to see you. Thank you for watching. But at any rate, I don't know. I kind of see what you're saying, Joe. It's like it's like the songs are just a bad penny. They keep turning up everywhere.
Yeah, they do.
Well, I mean, this particular continuity is from 20 years ago on Enterprise, so just feels like fan service. It's fine. It's just a few lines of dialogue.
Right. You've seen them in Picard. You've seen them here. Where else?
Enterprise.
Like I said, this particular character was an Enterprise during that arc.
Right.
He was the one responsible.
Which is what stretches it for me.
He's the one responsible. I'm sorry, Leah, for what?
For the Klingon, the smooth Klingons that we saw in the original show, and I don't know. It's like, it does feel like it makes the universe, the galaxy, seem a little small. Are the songs the source of all the problems, including involving robotics and genetics in the Federation? I think the answer is solid.
Your answer is maybe.
I mean, it's, aside from Data, everything else they've done has been pretty dodgy.
Joe Townsend brings up a good point, says Craig Lubin. Next, Billy Bob Sung is going to be the creator of the perfect smooth Romulan ale.
If you do that,
thank you, Craig.
He would. There'd be a lot forgiven if you could do that.
That's true. That is very true.
But
speaking of which, I don't know. I hope I get that Romulan ale for Christmas, because if I do, I will put it on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Put that on my wish list.
Very nice.
Romulan ale is being produced in a replica of the bottle from Star Trek 2.
Yeah.
And then subsequent.
Well, if you've been a good boy, Chris, Santa's listening.
I know.
He's
Santa's
his list.
That's been good. That's been very good. I always loved that bottle.
It's very cool.
The minute I saw McCoy pull that thing out and hand it to Kirk, I was like, wow, that is cool. That's a damn cool bottle. So.
I think the only one cooler is the original Saurian brandy bottle. That one just is.
Well, yes. And, where is mine? Oh, I thought I had it in here. Oh, mine might be still living. I have two of them. I have the one that Leo gave me in high school.
Wow.
For some reason, doesn't have the labels on it anymore, or the strap. I think the strap rotted away on it that holds it. It's just the bottle with the base. And then I have another one that I got later on that still says Dickel on it and has the strap and.
Yeah, Rich. I have this. The top, as you can see, is the top is somewhere, and I'm sure if I found it, I could replace the cork and I could do this. It's still in pretty good shape, other than that part. But I found these in an old antique store in New Hampshire, many years ago, before anybody knew that it had value other than kind of here's a cool looking empty bottle. So but I have two of them. I have the one Leo gave me, and then the other one that is more like what Leo just showed. It's got all the.
Until Leo brought the bottle and you can see the base in the frame, you can only see the neck up to that point. I thought he actually got a replica of that prop from Star Trek last week. So well, that is impressive.
Really hard to
You know
find.
what? Damn it! I meant to change my Spock into a yellow tunic, and I didn't do it. He's back up there, sitting on in his usual at his post, standing next to
the Star Trek
blue. Yeah,
the Star Trek limited edition Mego.
The Star Trek limited, Turk limited edition.
With the extra big ears.
That would be pretty funny to even as a gag to just do that.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
We should do a commercial.
We should with Uhura in the pink tunic and yeah.
If we could get somebody to do
all those little costumes
in Turkish, that would be great.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, back to the episode. Well, I mean, I enjoyed this episode, and so let's talk a little bit what's going on in the Dauntless.
So that's the other part of it. The Dauntless ends up chasing them. Well, they run into them on this planet, which is sort of like the Star Trek version of Mos Eisley.
Well, that was the week before.
That's the week before, right? Okay, I'm getting confused now.
Yeah, is having a very unpleasant conversation with Admiral Jellicoe, which basically everybody's saying you're being too emotional. Although it's funny because while she's obviously very interested in finding out what happened to Chakotay, her very close friend, but she was sent in charge to find the protostar and find out what happened to Chakotay. But every time she's like, "Yeah, they're over there," they're like, "Yeah, don't do anything."
Right.
It just feel like he didn't even say, "Listen, diplomatic." They're trying to find a diplomatic way of solving this. It just feels like you're like, well, too bad. And Ronnie Cox is doing an excellent job as Jellicoe, who is. It's funny because he has a real reputation as a hard ass, which he is. He's like he's not the touchy feely captain by any stretch. And the only thing he did that I really agreed with was having quarter shifts, like 4 6-hour shifts rather than 3 8-hour shifts.
Right.
It seems like a better
and they're all bitching about it. They're all complaining about it.
Like all cats who are like, you changed that. Why'd you move that couch? I know, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I think there's just because I think it's a loyalty to Picard, and also we're supposed to hate this guy.
I guess, except I don't know. I guarantee you, Mariner and her gang on lower decks would have been happy to have those shorter shifts.
I'm sure they would.
I'm sure they would. Although it would give Delta Shift a chance to shine, which might be a problem.
Yes. So many quandaries. But so the whole thing is like, what are we going to do? They've detected the protostar in there, and her final solution is to fire micro torpedoes at it. Apparently, it's very close to the border. Close enough. Oh, Joe.
Oh, there goes Joe.
In
the meantime, I'm just going to throw this joke up. Will Admiral Marcus Peter Weller kill Admiral Jellicoe Ronnie Cox again?
I feel like they're both in the Bad Rules Club.
That's somewhat of a deep cut for you guys. You tell me if you figure out what Craig's talking about.
Oh, totally. I mean, we're talking RoboCop.
I know you guys know. I'm talking about people.
Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to spoil surprise.
Yeah.
But who knows what this with the Prime Universe version of Marcus is like or was like,
Right.
He might be a sweetheart.
Yeah. It's funny. They at an airport they have the Admirals Club. If you're like one of these, platinum card holders,
right.
But they should have the Badmirals Club, where admirals can go and plot, how to improve the Federation to their standards.
Well, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with this, but I rewatched the Jellicoe episode recently, and he kind of got some shit handed to him.
Yeah,
pardon my language, because the Enterprise is going into a combat situation, and he gets it handed to him with no time to adjust to his crew, or have his crew adjust to him. So he goes about it in the only way he can think of, which is, well, I'm going to make my changes and just assume because I've got one of the best crews in Starfleet, they're going to be able to keep up. I don't know.
Also, I
think it's an excellent point.
He's a jerk, but I watched it again recently and thought, well, maybe not.
I also question why you would send the captain of the flagship of the Federation. I agree with you, Chris, as Keith. The captain of the flagship of the Federation on a covert mission, which is no knock on Picard or even Worf, Worf is the guy who's sort of trained to do this sort of like security move. I think Jellicoe gets a bad rap. In TNG, they were about to go to war with the Borg, and he didn't have time to handle the crew. It wasn't the Borg; it was the Cardassians.
The Cardassians, but yeah.
But the point.
Well, look at it this way, guys. I mean, look at how Picard was in the alternate reality of yesterday's Enterprise. Not too dissimilar from Jellicoe in this, and under a similar, at least about to be, warlike situation. So obviously command styles change radically when you're getting ready to go into combat and possibly into a full-scale war.
I know, I agree, but I just also it's an interesting episode, and we got what's his name, the great British who played the Cardassian. Who now we're really going down the rabbit hole.
Oh, David Warner.
David Warner,
yeah.
Who has appeared as Klingons and also in Star Trek V is the Terran ambassador.
Yeah.
A fine actor tends to play heavies. But it's like, why are you sending a starship captain to go infiltrate a Cardassian base, versus having like a bunch of like trained security officers do that. It feels a little agree with Camera Geek. Got a bad deal. Riker was practically insubordinate. This is true, but we all like Riker more than we like Jellicoe. So there you go.
In relation to the on Jellicoe, because in
relation to the RoboCop related question a minute ago, I wonder if Malcolm McDowell's Tully and Soren would have pursued David Warner's characters through time and space.
That's true. That's very true. All right, guys.
The show is a rabbit hole.
Prodigy.
That's what if? Let's get
What if? Yeah.
But, and of course, meanwhile, back on the Prodigy. Yeah. So we're about to get back to the ship.
Yep.
Because there's one of these like sky elevators, one of these orbital elevators, and the Janeway. I forgot what was the reason she aborted the attack.
Just to infringe on Romulan space, to avoid that.
But she already did. She fired torpedoes. Also, she shows up and 3 Romulan warbirds decloak in front of her, but she fires these missiles in, and nobody seems to notice. It seems a little odd.
Well, again, we go back to what I said a couple of weeks ago, which is this is the neutral zone.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a buffer zone between the Federation space and the Romulan Empire.
Yeah.
So Federation ships, Enterprise, what have you, crawl in 5 feet into the friggin' neutral zone, and the Romulans show up and they're up their butt like, do you want an active war? Well, they are already in the...
Yeah, it does always... It's like, the neutral zone should be the buffer. Nobody should be in there. Like, they should be on the other side. Like,
either nobody should be in there, or they should both be allowed to play in there. But the point is, it's supposed to be a it's like where that came from, I'm sure, was the Korean War.
Yeah,
because there's that 39th parallel or whatever it is, that buffer zone between North and South Korea.
Yeah.
And that was set up during the war. And I'm sure that's where in 1960 something, maybe, I don't know when that Korean conflict had ended by then. We were getting into Vietnam at that point.
Yeah, we're in Vietnam.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's where that came from.
But it
just seems to me that we get in trouble for wandering across the neutral zone to rescue a ship, and we're in there maybe 40 miles in or something like that, and the Romulans show up right away and they're giving us crap about it, which means they were obviously hiding in there.
Yeah.
To know we were in there, because the neutral zone has to be a big chunk of space, right?
It's going to be a number of light years.
It's got to be more than me looking across the street at my neighbor.
Yeah, I agree. It's always been a little fuzzy, but she does. Now I'm trying to remember. It's been a week. You'll forgive me, but they were able to.
Yeah, the Romulan, the Praetor.
Praetor. Yeah. So they so she calls off the attack. The protostar is not blown up. Our heroes get away. So it's it always bugged me. The Romulans get to encroach on the zone all the time, but not Starfleet. It does feel, it's a very fuzzy bit of Star Trek lore because it's never been like really.
No, but Keith and I we're on the same page tonight. Keith and I.
Oh, you, Keith, and Pog. You made the same observation.
Yeah.
Right.
But of course, the difference here is the Romulans don't play like the Federation does. I mean, they're trying to trick us into breaching it, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a very interesting. I don't know. They've never really. Nobody's ever said this is how the neutral zone works.
Well, I'm just surprised. Like if I were playing it in an RPG and I were the captain and I had to cross into the neutral zone, and all of a sudden Romulans showed up and they were like, hey, you're, what are you doing here? You're creating an active war. I'm like, well, how did you get here? I mean, they're there before me because they're waiting for me.
Yeah.
Go across the line.
Well, I mean, I guess if you got cloak ships, you can patrol within the neutral zone and be like, gotcha.
Well, as Keith said, here he is. Keith said,
and we're talking about the width. We're about the length.
Sneaky bastards, I guess. Yeah,
that's true.
Well, they are, or the ones we've met so far are.
All right.
Let me sort of give a wrap up on this episode.
Yeah, I know. Wait, one last thing. Get off of this. The neutral zone is 1 light year wide. As usual, no information on the Z axis, however high it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether you can go over the neutral zone.
Right. Sneak underneath. Woohoo!
Yeah. I forgot that there is the big reveal at the end with Ensign Essentia reveals herself.
Oh yes.
A Vol Naak, which is the name of the species of the diviner,
right?
From a planet named Solum, and she's also from the future. And she touches the back of her neck, and she has like a genetic one of those little genetic doodads like a doll had, which allowed her to disguise herself as a Trill.
Right.
And up from underneath the coffee table comes I made notes here, the Dreadnought robot. Slightly different from the one that the diviner had,
right? And
he looks like looks like he's having a bit of a senior moment.
Yeah.
When this thing unfolds.
But it just goes to show you, the writers at Star Trek Prodigy are very clever and don't second guess them, because there was a lot of shade for a while about why is this ensign who's not a medical officer spending all this time with this guy who's a patient when she should be, I forget what department she was in, but it wasn't.
She's a bridge officer. She's like a navigator or
right. And there was a lot of shade about it. And well, why is that? And blah, blah, blah. And they don't have enough characters on the Dauntless and so on and so forth. But the reason she's hanging around is because she's one of him. So yeah. So there you go.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
And managed to paint herself as the best one to work with that visitor,
right?
Yeah.
Which didn't arouse too much suspicion as far as her continued absence from her usual post.
Right.
Presumably, she was like, was doing it with Janeway's permission.
I would think that. Now, I will say, I feel like there should be, and we'll get into this more in Preludes, because you see a bit more of the Dauntless. Well, maybe not a bit more, but you see more of the Dauntless. And I just feel like there's a moment near the end of that episode where Janeway goes off to do something. I'm not going to get into what. And just like anytime you see a captain or an officer walking through the halls of their ship, you see people going about their business. And she's walking down the hallway and there's nobody there. And I just feel like there should be more people aboard the Dauntless than there are.
I would like to see more of the crew.
Yeah, there should be more crew visible.
I think it may be an economic thing, because unlike, let's say, a live action show where, well, it does cost to have like background actors, but it's cheaper to have put somebody in a uniform, and have them put them at a station on the bridge. They don't have to have lines or walking down the hallways, than just to have to design a whole new character, a CG character, that we're not going to see a lot of.
I guess.
Yeah. I have another theory too, as far as that might be a deliberate execution. Because of course, anybody, no matter the age, who watches Star Trek is brilliant, as we all know. But having said that, because we are talking, this is aimed, as we always say, for younger viewers. Maybe that's on purpose so they can just focus on that character.
Yeah.
And not be distracted easily by other stuff going on on the screen.
I just feel like the Dauntless is huge. It's a big ship.
Yeah.
So as it stands now, given the amount of characters you've seen, the Diviner could take over the Dauntless, considering how many actual crew members you've seen. You've seen Janeway and the Andorian, and then the other character who's on the Diviner side. So
and the Doctor.
Yeah, and the Doctor, right? The surly.
We've seen one or two other bridge officers. There's another guy, like a junior officer, who was like saying something to her on the bridge, but he's not been well established. But yeah, it just might be like creating. That means somebody has to spend time creating, a bunch of background.
Yeah, no, I know.
But I mean, we agree.
I think of CG characters as, because I know I've created some for things, and they could just create 10 or 15. They could create a man and a woman, swap out hair and top wardrobe, and maybe add an antenna here or there, and it wouldn't be that hard to do. But
it's a legitimate question, but I'm sure. I'm sure there are reasons for it. I don't think it's.
So this was an interesting episode because it gives us all the backstory for these kids.
Yeah.
And how they came to be on the Diviners.
This is the prelude. The next episode. We're moving on.
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah. It sounds like we've segued.
We have segued. Well, because as Keith points out to me that he's having a ball, but we're 47 minutes into the show and we haven't covered the second episode.
Well, this, if I may, this might be the time to make the comment I alluded to earlier.
Yes.
In that I get the impression that some people may not have been as big of a fan of this episode because it might have seemed to come too late in the season for this type of backstory. But for me and people like me that haven't been there from the beginning,
right,
it was a welcome addition because it really filled in some blanks for me.
Yeah, I will say if you look at it as including the first, I think of as the first season, but it's really the first half of the season.
Right.
That's a lot of episodes to get to this point. And all of a sudden, now we're getting the backstory. But on the other hand, since I'm really just focusing on what I see as this second season, I thought it was really entertaining.
I enjoyed it. I kind of wish that everybody's story had a different animation style, but that probably would be very expensive.
That's a cool idea, though.
Sometimes it's nice to shake it up a little.
Yeah.
Well, our crew on the Protostar, they're trying to repair the Protostar drive, so they're doing a lot of screwing around, not screwing around, but they're doing repairs. And Dal's like, I'm not good at this. You're good at this. He says to Jink and Pog, and they're like, they point out like, hey, we're part of a team, Captain. Let's,
right. But they do get to this point where they've made the repairs and they have to wait for things to reboot, and they really have nothing to do. And that gives them this opportunity, this sort of almost hanging around the fireside opportunity to sit and talk about their stories.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, it was a little, what's the term? It went right out of my head.
Expository. Yeah, there was a lot of exposition. Be like, well, let me tell you my story. But because it's not just somebody talking, we get to see them, even with some narration. So it's there's a visual aspect that was good. So why don't we talk about each one?
Okay, before we do that, Keith makes the comment that he says, I think this was the perfect place to put these backstories. We got a chance to care about these characters first before getting beaten over the heads with their tragic backstories.
This is true, because they all kind of...
And they might have dragged it down if it was too close to the beginning of the series.
Might have.
Yeah, I think so. I think now that they're all friends, they're kind of like this sort of found family.
Right.
They're sort of like, they're like, hey, what's your deal? Like, well,
now, does anybody, you guys have a favorite backstory?
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
The one with the I'm sorry, the big rocky girl. I mean, I gotta get my character. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, that was just so much fun with the fun sword and everything, and it just brought me right back to like Thor Ragnarok between Thor and Hulk. It was a perfect homage to that was intended. That was the most fun for me.
Joe is a man of the faces, Keith. I mean, that was his favorite. I like that. It's interesting because even the armor the old man is wearing is somewhat reminiscent of the armor Thor wore in Ragnarok.
Yes, exactly.
They're definitely. It was sort of sweet.
Yeah.
Although, I guess they were rock stories hit me the hardest in the feels, says Keith.
That's a good point.
I guess they were both sort of beholden to that Bolian with a rare Bolian with hair. The blue aliens that have that kind of slit on the top of their head.
Yeah.
Who sells Rock-Talk into slavery to a Kazon. Kazons, by the way, are the worst.
Yeah, aren't they?
Here's the thing. If you, I was doing a little research. It's been a long while since I've seen the Kazon, other than here.
Yeah.
The Kazon were enslaved by another species.
Right.
And now they've become slavers. So that is like, it's like you are so much worse than people who just didn't know better.
Right.
Like you think you'd be like, oh, well, we're never going to do that to somebody. Like that was terrible what happened to us. They were like, that was terrible. But there's a lot of money. Kazon stamped them all, says Keith. So that's Kazons. I got very little sympathy for the Kazon. They're sort of, they're not powerful, but they're just like, they're just,
they're thugs.
They're thugs, but they're encroaching,
and they're paying their revenge forward. Basically.
I guess so.
I mean that's what it seems like.
But I did like the rock talk, but we said, well, I only got half of what I got. That was not half. That was like a spoonful, of that weird shiny stew. That we ate after every meal.
But clearly it was tasty. It's a rock. I mean, she liked it.
I guess so. Yeah. But just
let me interrupt a second. I just noticed it, so it may have been from 10 minutes ago. But John Van Gostine is back with a thumbs up, and so is Donald Faulkner. Thank you.
Hey,
guys.
Don.
Thank you guys for being
welcome,
here.
guys.
Okay, go ahead. So
I enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
I liked the Jenga Pog segment because now we know why he says Jenga Pog always does this, because he was part of this was a pre-Federation Tellarite ship.
Right.
Although I have some questions later on.
I do too. But
is that he was in a cryo tube and he's woken up because it looks like an asteroid has hit the ship and needed to be repairs. And he says, wake up the engineer. There's this robot that wakes him up and asks him to do repairs. But the programming of this robot is like, you have to state your name and then your query. So, which is why he would say something, but like, what's going on? He'd be like, does not compute. So he has to keep saying, Jacob, we'll do this. And he's just going nuts. He's being sent all over the ship to do repairs.
Right.
And this originally reminded me of Seinfeld when George would be like, George is very angry. When it was a sly Seinfeld nod, which it still could be. But I like the idea that he was.
This was supposed to be the summer of Jacob Pond.
Yeah. So it was interesting to see where that behavior originated from. And it was, he tended to play a lot of the comedic beats. Craig says, so pre-Federation Telluride ships had no warp drive or shields. Yeah, I question why there were no shields. Even just sort of like deflectors, just to keep, that's what a deflector ship is. Deflector dish is supposed to keep like stuff from hitting the ship like that. It's not, they're not full defensive measures, but just to keep the ship from not being dinged up. They're on their way to the Delta Quadrant at pre-Federation warp. That would have taken a very long time, pod kind of time. So that's a question I had was, where were they going? Were they going to the Delta Quadrant? Now, like, let's say they were even going warp 2, which is maybe, depending on your, which book is, it might be like speed of light squared, or times 2. Even that is by galactic standards, not that it's fast enough to do interstellar, but there's time dilation and all that stuff. So, they put everybody in cryosleep, or maybe they're not going at warp. It's pre-Federation, so it's not established how fast they're going.
Right.
But it did feel like, I'm like, how did the Kazon find them? Like how, because and how old is Jenka Pollock? How long was he in that tube? Was this a ship that just got sent out and everybody forgot about it? And it just was like, kept going and going and going, and there was a malfunction and navigation.
But he says what I was saying, hang on, which is he was repairing a warp core.
Yeah. Well, even if they're going warp 1, which is effectively the speed of light, as I understand it, I'm not sure how accurate that is, because Star Trek is wildly inconsistent in, how fast warp is, depending on, what book you're looking at.
Yeah.
Well, I think calling on Craig here, but my recollection is that warp 1 is the speed of light, but every warp after that is a geometric progression.
Like an exponential, yeah.
Right.
I think so.
Greg? So, Greg, if you're listening, if you're still listening, you have something to add, please, our scientific consultant.
Right. Back me up, Craig, if you can.
But, no Federation ship had any contact with the Kazon until the Voyager was flung all the way to the, the ass end of the Delta Quadrant.
Right.
So, they seem to be encroaching on at least Gamma Quadrant.
Well, yeah, because I got the impression that they
exponential.
Oh, thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I just kept waiting for them to get away from the Kazon by the time as Voyager kept traveling, and the Kazon just seemed to keep following them.
Yeah.
So,
I guess so. It's a little. At a certain point, I'm not sure. It's fine. It doesn't.
do we have the Kazon as a bad because it's a Janeway show? Maybe.
That's not a terrible.
Well, that makes sense. That's why we have it, but trying to determine the specifics, of course, is a little trickier as far as how they are, where they are, and so forth.
Again, I'm just picking nits about that. Warp 1 is still light speed. Goddamn phone cut off the first part. Yeah, no, yeah.
Even Craig is victim of technology every now and then.
Well, I hope 8-year-olds don't watch this show.
Well,
not Prodigy. This show.
Yes.
Here we go. They changed the warp scale in TNG. It got faster, but topped out at warp 10, where you're everywhere in the universe simultaneously.
Right.
Is that why you can't go beyond warp 10?
It's also you're supposed to exist everywhere simultaneously, and it's like infinite speed apparently.
It's it sounds like the infinite improbability drive from Hitchhikers.
Yeah. Although in All Good Things, the last episode of TNG, they somehow made it to warp 13. So who knows what's going on there?
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of. There's a lot of. Listen, it's at a certain point we just have to be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because it's it's just a TV show where you should really just relax. To quote another great show.
And yet time travel is too much for me. Right.
And I think that's a good point, Leo, in terms of, backpedaling it back down to, this is the entertainment, and in terms of Pog's backstory, I mean, that's what we have here. I mean, there might be some inconsistencies, some questions are raised, but clearly he's on a ship that it just isn't up to snuff, and that gives him his device for his recollection. I think that worked on that level for sure.
Right.
Craig backed up Keith's assertion. Like I said, these are I'm just being picky. Like I'm being like about this,
That's the fun of it, though.
Yeah, there's fun. There's joy to being that sort of, picky about stuff. But overall, it didn't ruin it didn't take me out of it. But now the last story was Zero's story.
Yeah.
And
which I thought was kind of neat, because all you've ever seen of the Medusans is that one episode.
Yeah.
And the ambassador was getting carried around in a box.
Yeah. So they're exploring this planet, and the ship they had was the same design for the revised TOS when they upped everything, the special effects. And that was a ship, because the ship was never seen. It was referred to but never seen in the original series. But when they did put a spit shine on TOS, that was the design they came up with. And it looks a lot like a Federation ship, so presumably it was built by Federation engineers, because they are an energy being, so they don't really need, they probably don't have an industry as we do. But the Kazon again strike again, capturing poor Zero, while the rest of the Medusans just leave him there. That seems a little dodgy.
Did I see correctly when that they're wearing the little safety goggles?
Yes, what Spock did. Yes,
and the box the box they put her in is like the one from the TOS episode.
Nice continuity, like that.
So I like that. Although I did wonder, can't Zero just fly up where they can't get her? It's sort of talking about going back to the neutral zone. Why don't they just fly under it or over it? Because if you can fly, because it's not, Zero is not bound by, Earth. It's not like Zero's like running down this canyon. He or she or it. I'm not. The actor appears to be male. His name is Angus, and I don't know his pronouns, so I don't want to offend anybody.
Right.
And I'm not sure whether Medusans have genders as we understand them. But Zero could have, if you can fly straight, could probably fly, up. But they captured Zero and presented them to the diviner, and of course Gwen is like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Everybody's cool with stuff that went on, in the past. They've all forgiven each other for any transgressions, it seems. So,
well, I mean, it is interesting that as far as picking nits, as you say, Leo, that way back in Star Trek 2, Spock called us out on it and says, Khan is guilty of two-dimensional thinking. And what do they do?
Yeah.
Rise up and down.
Yeah.
They since have forgotten that. Oh, well.
Well, here's another thing, sort of going this a little back to the old episode. Is in Wrath of Khan, they introduced the idea of the prefix code, which would allow Federation to take control of another Federation ship, presumably maybe if the crew was, in danger or had been killed,
incapacitated in some way or something.
Why don't they try to do that with the Protostar? That's because it was a great bit in combat. It's never showed up again that I can roll, unless.
Oh wait, there was something.
They might have. That's the one. If I'm wrong, I'll happily concede. But if any of our viewers,
I thought there was something in recent memory in New Trek actually where they used it.
Maybe. I
can't recall. I'm sure there's been mentions here and there, but I can't recall offhand where it was used for dramatic effect like it was in Wrath of Khan. But
right.
Anyway, but again, so and they finally asked Janeway. They were like, "Oh, everything's been rebooted." Everybody's like, "Yay!" And what was Janeway like before you were holograms? Never tell you about Molly, which is her dog that she had.
Yeah, poor Molly.
Prefix code, Starfleet's safety word. Safe word is the.
Can always rely on you, Craig.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Cinnamon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tugged at my heart a little bit, but hearing about poor Molly, having to go pretty much at least half her life without her mommy.
Yeah,
right.
So now back on the Dauntless, Admiral Janeway is talking with her XO, and they find out, and she's like, who are these? Like, these kids. They find out, we don't know anything about them. He said, well, actually, this just came over the subspace. There was a bounty put out by the diviner, and gives them. And she's like, oh, they're just kids. They're not criminal. They're just kids. Something's going on. And this is the diviner, and her XO is like probably a very serious man given his name.
Yeah, a little bit of a hint.
A little bit of a hint. So, but back in in Diviner's private quarters, Essentia, who is now we find out her name later on is the Vindicator.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That we get this whole backstory about what had happened, and like fills in a few other blanks. We get to see Chakotay. That Chakotay went through like a temporal anomaly and was flung into the future sort of after their planet was in ruins. And they capture the ship, and he has this, I think it's Aurelian. It's an avian species is his XO. So it wasn't just him.
Right.
And they're captured, and they put on the weapon, and they're going to pilot it back to late 24th century, and destroy the Federation, rather than maybe try to prevent that's one way of preventing the thing, because he talks about how the Federation their appearance caused this big rift in our society, but they wouldn't take a side, which is I read like they had a very angry view of
that whole thing. That whole final explanation as to why he's so angry at the Federation and why they all are is really, from my perspective, I'm not saying writing wise, I'm saying about them. That's pretty lame.
It is. Well,
it's a really stupid reaction to have to that,
They all thought they were the king of the galaxy, and then the Federation shows up, and they're also like, well, they would get more out of being joining the Federation than vice versa. And it's very childish. But the one thing I will say is when she's telling the story, you get these sort of like beautiful, like artistic tableaus, which look like Soviet murals, Soviet era murals of the revolution.
That's quite true.
And which I was like, which is sort of goes back to this previous episode when everybody's story. I kind of wish there was a different animation style, and I understand that's a lot of money, but I did like these sort of still images, and it was
neat.
It was really neat, and sort of reinforced this sort of like brutalist, sort of attitude that
well, and speaking, Chris, to your point about the motivations there, I mean, I remember watching for the first time Revenge of the Sith, and I'm thinking, this is why Anakin became Darth Vader. But you know what? Right. It does harken to the fact that in real life that is human nature to consume yourself over nothing.
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. Because I guess half the planet was like, as captain of the ship, I will go and visit the potential slaver all by myself without security. It'll be fine.
Totally logical.
Well, she's on her ship, so why she had no reason to believe that anything,
Yeah.
And the diviner gives her the old karate chop, judo chop. Flintstones reference. For those of you who know what I'm talking about.
3D House of Karate.
Yeah, so it was it's a dramatic end, although it does feel like, maybe, it feels like things are escalating.
Yeah, Keith makes a good point. I've confessed a couple of weeks ago about drama through misunderstanding. I'm glad we're on the path to resolving the misunderstanding. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because while this is a 20 episode season, broken into 2 parts, a lot of, streaming shows are 8 episodes, 10, somewhere between usually 8 and 12 episodes. They're Diviner knows Kirk Fu, yes. Although he didn't do the double-handed. Like if he did the double-handed, that's a real Kirk Fu.
Good one, Craig.
Yeah.
But it's I'm glad they're resolving things. That is a problem. Like I think more with older TV than newer TV.
Right.
Is they set up like here's like Gilligan's Island. Now, I mean, of course, if they get off Gilligan's Island, the show is over. But that's the problem when you set up like you when you set up a problem and then it's like it's not revealed for 3 seasons in, and then by then you're either like if the show is still going on, you're either like what I guess. I would say The Good Place is a good example of them changing the narrative, because they figure out they're in the bad place. Spoilers for a show that was on, 6 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they found ways of, pivoting and new ways of exploring that.
Right.
And changing, putting them in different places and doing, I like the fact that they are resolving stuff, and I'm hoping by the end, I don't know if they'll be reunited with the Federation, but maybe more on the road to doing that.
Right.
Because
Keith and I were talking earlier today about if this was a role-playing game, I have a solution to the kids' problem with the Federation, but we won't get into that. I mean, if I were playing it, I would, because you saw that they had the ability to build shuttlecraft, right? Because in the early episode, they have a replicator that allows them to actually build something as large as a shuttlecraft. So build a shuttlecraft, leave the Protostar, and go to the Dauntless and explain yourself. Because by doing that, they can get in touch with Starfleet and not have the weapon have direct contact with the Dauntless. So
the only question I thought of that myself.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like they could have, or even if it's like, leave a physical message, somewhere. My only question is because the weapon is so integrated into their system.
Right.
So if you were to build a shuttlecraft or use a shuttlecraft on the show, would it be infected by that same, malware?
That I don't know. But it seems to me that if it's not part of that weapon is integrated into, this is my logic. Now I could be wrong, but that the weapon is integrated into the systems of the Protostar. So any kind of data transfer, any kind of communication, what have you, from the Protostar, yes, that creates a link to the weapon. But I think if you generated, the weapon has a physical presence though that's tied into the Protostar. It's underneath the bridge deck. So I think if you built your own shuttlecraft, that's detached from, I mean, this seems to me, unless there's a worm code that will be left in there that
maybe. I mean, that was my thought is why they didn't do it. Unless they were kids and like, oh wait, we could have done that. Janeway's like, why didn't you just do this? And be like, because we didn't think of it.
What is going on about here? Hang on. Gilligan's Island secret. They were all dead and Gilligan was Satan. Yeah, is that a Lost reference?
I think so, yes.
They were everybody on Gilligan's Island was living in purgatory. That's what it was. My point, though, was that even though they're kids, they should be able to find a way to let Starfleet know their problem. Teenagers smart enough to figure that out.
Fair enough. Okay, how about blinking running lights? I'm sure Hollow Janeway knows Morse codes.
There you go.
Possibly.
And I guess Craig was referring to Lost because he says, yeah.
Yes.
All of a sudden, Mary Ann didn't stumble across the Dharma Project.
Yeah.
Might have been more interesting if she had.
Unaired episode, secret episode of Gilligan's Island. So
again for the week living down inside the, the bunker or something.
Yes, I don't know. Again, we're now sort of like pulling on threads to unravel this, but it's we'll find out. I think we don't know much about the nature of the weapon other than when the Talaxian at that outpost had linked up, it compromised all the systems on the outpost.
Yeah, I mean, Keith is saying that if you build the ship using the ship system, that the weapon would infect the shuttle. I guess
that was my assumption. Otherwise,
yeah, I guess I don't know.
It would be nice if they just said that.
I could argue it the other way, but if that's if that's what the point is, if that's the tech Bible there, then that's fine.
I mean, it all makes sense. It reminds me of a little bit of Relics in TNG when let me get this right. The Enterprise is trying to escape from the Dyson sphere,
right,
and they destroy the Janolan while it has its shields up, which of course is supposed to be impossible,
right?
And they just said, you know what, a line of dialogue would have fixed that. But then again, a line of dialogue may have just been too clunky at that point, and who knows, maybe we're leading toward a season ender where they're finally able to make contact some way, getting around the whole, weapon aspect. So,
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not really sure why. Maybe because I had a coughing fit, but Barbara Pitcher posted a sad face. Oh. I'm not really sure. Is that because I was coughing?
I'm sure it was.
I'm okay, Mom. Yeah. Little dry air in here or something.
Yeah.
Any rate,
overall, I enjoyed this episode. We're pulling on threads. Us, yes.
Never, Keith.
Never.
I overall enjoyed.
I mean, we are 18 minutes over tonight.
Yes.
But hey, that's not bad timing for a enthralling Thanksgiving discussion followed by 2 episode dissections.
Right.
So, hey.
Plus a Jellicoe divergence.
Yes,
of course.
Yeah. We go off about Jellicoe for about 10 minutes.
About 13 minutes discussing Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And how we cooked it.
Yes.
We should do a Trek cooking show.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I can watch that Riker backyard cooking show in a heartbeat.
Well, I know you said that.
Yes.
So, all right, let's wrap this up, guys. Any last minute thoughts about these 2 episodes? I again, when I watched Masquerade, I was left thinking, "Ooh, I can't wait till next week," and that surprised me a little bit because I didn't really expect to have that same eagerness with this show, but it was hooking me in, and so I had that, and I enjoyed this one very much, and I was kind of like, okay, yeah, it ended there. All right, well, let's see what's next. So it's got my attention.
It has my attention too, and I think actually having this is kind of like a interesting sort of. It's a bit of a pause, not a pause, like a lull, because everybody shared their backstory. So now we have a little more sense of who the characters were. I love Jacob Pug, the explanation for why Jacob Pug talks about himself.
I love that too. That was really fun. Yeah.
So and the fact that, something was going on in the Dauntless and the stakes are being elevated there. Captain Anthony Storm and the Demon Turkeys of Rigel 7. Yes.
A little inside joke there.
A little inside baseball. Inside the Warp Core.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm enjoying it. I think it's good to sort of like if it's too frantic every week, sometimes it gets a little like you just get like exhausted. So it's nice to have that little moment for them to sort of share a nice bonding moment with each other.
And quite frankly, I feel that if they hadn't had that conversation yet, they would have.
Yeah.
Obviously. So this was a great opportunity for us as the audience to get their backstory.
Yeah.
Without having to have, 5 different episodes, each one telling their backstory.
Yeah.
I've seen that before.
Yeah.
So it was cool. I liked it. And I enjoyed the one before.
I did too. I mean,
I went into this one anticipating other people's possible misgivings about it appearing so late in the season. I was glad that Craig and Keith could kind of reassure me that, hey, this is actually a good placement for it, because it's a good point in the season-long story arc to kind of have a character building episode.
Yeah.
And now that I think about it, it kind of reminds me, although that happened later in that series, but the episode of Family in TNG 4th season.
Yeah.
After a lot of stuff going on for a couple episodes prior, we're gonna take a breath and examine where our people are right now before we move them forward.
Right. I think next week maybe I'll hire a pianist. And then when we start to wander off topic too long, the pianist will play that music like at the Oscars.
Play us off.
Yeah, we'll play us off and we'll realize we have to stop. I think that's a really good point, Joe. And I don't know. I'm enjoying the show. I'm not going to say a lot more than I thought I would, because that sounds very negative, and I don't really mean that. But I am really enjoying it, and I'm glad, because I'm glad it's not just a kid show, but that it's got some broader appeal than
I really feel like, I don't have, Chris has kids, so but I don't. But I think that if you wanted to introduce your kids to Star Trek, and you don't want to like overwhelm them with like the vast history of Star Trek.
Right.
And, some very talky stuff, especially like TOS, which I love. But for a young kid, that might be a little,
a little cerebral.
Yeah. And the special effects, the polished special effects are good, but even it's their pacing is a lot slower compared to modern shows.
Yeah.
Now
I hate to do this, because I think Joe must have had a glitch there, but I hate to sign off without him, but I know we'll give him another 30 seconds, and then otherwise I'll let's see. We have a comment here from Craig. It's a fun show that strikes the delicate balance, there's Joe, of being appealing to younger and older audiences. So that's true.
Yeah. I think it's good. I think
very much so.
If I had kids and I was like, hey, do you want to, I'm enjoying it more than I thought I would enjoy kid shows. So, I think I think this would be, if you had kids and you wanted to be like, hey, dad likes Star Trek or mom likes Star Trek.
Right.
And you're like, hey, this is a new Star Trek show, and it's, I think you might like it. And you were like, let's watch an episode, especially the first one, which were very action packed and very bright. There's a lot of bright colors, so that I think appeals to children.
Right.
And they might, after that, they're like, hey, is there any more Star Trek? And you're like, well, actually, yes.
Right. Yeah. There is. Yeah.
Well, and even though it's better to start at the beginning, I'm proof that you can take your kid and jump in kind of any point and still enjoy it.
Yeah,
right. That's right. Because you really didn't watch certainly not the first half of the season in its entirety.
No, not even close. I watched the first one and jumped in with you guys midway through. So
right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we're well over our time, 24 minutes. Wow. And if you want any of our recipes, at any rate, I actually could put a link in the comments to some of those recipes. Maybe we should do a cooking show sometime.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like
I want to see them.
Yeah,
not for me, nobody else.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Listen, we will be back next week. For you know what? I didn't even, you know why we ran long? Because I didn't use any of our banners. That's why. I didn't use issues. I didn't give it an episode rating. I didn't do any of this stuff. That's why we ran long. But you stood still. Follow us on Twitch on Trek Tonight. Actually, we had one viewer, which I think is Keith, on Twitch this week, but we'd love to have more. And we've
Yeah.
got more people following us there. So that would be great. And we'll see you all next week, I guess.
Yeah.
What do we got next week? I forgot what the episode's called.
I don't know.
I have them all written out, but how many episodes?
Ghost in the Machine, is that it?
There are 4 more.
4 more. And the
I
last
think next week is
the
I think next week is the Ghost in the Machine, or that's
right.
close.
Right. And then there's another one, and then the 2-parter.
Right.
By the way, this was
There we go.
this episode was credited to the entire writing staff, and the last time that happened was the Moral Star 2-parter end of the first half of the season. So
Cool.
All
Excellent.
right.
maybe different people wrote different background stuff.
Maybe. All right, guys, I'm going to roll us out of here with our
All right.
credits.
All right.
Till next week, have a wonderful week, and we will see you all right here, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And thank you for watching.
Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.